call the Education Committee of October 4th, 2018 to order. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provision of this Act, the Fairlawn Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having a date, time, and place thereof distributed to the persons on the approved list, posted in the Board of Education Administrative Office, and sent to the Bergen Record and the Star Ledger. Please. Oh, the announcement, I'm sorry. The announcement posting for the Education Committee meeting along with the date, place, and time thereof was distributed on September 4th, 2018. There's no closed session, right? No. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the meeting. Tonight we have two things on the agenda: the REACH discussion and dyslexia. So, back in August, I believe, the board had asked the administration to report back to us on the REACH program, on what we're doing and what their thoughts are for the future. I realize that this is a hot topic for many of you and many of the public that are here. I want to just say that this meeting is for the administration to advise the board on what's going on. It's a committee meeting of the Board of Education. As such, we welcome public comment. But what I'm going to do is, after the presentation from Dr. Lakatina, we're going to open the floor for public comment. I want to limit the public comment to about 20 minutes and 3 minutes apiece. What I'm asking for is if you don't repeat the same thing over and over again, because that way more of you could talk and more of you could give us information that you're concerned about. And then the board will have a chance to talk to the administration back and forth a little bit so that we could get the information that we need to move forward. So that's the way that's going to work. And what?
No.
Is there something?
No, he needs a pen.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
He was giving me a crayon.
Oh.
That's for later.
That's
I know,
for later.
I don't want to. Thank you. I don't want to wear out the point. Remember the extent that.
Mr. Norcia.
So, thank you, Mike. I'm going to stand with a little awkward, different setup tonight. So tonight we have two presentations. Like Mr. Rosenberg said, we heard everybody during the time. We heard there was a concern of REACH. We heard there was, you may be happy with the way things are going. But the purpose of tonight is to talk about where we are and where we're going. There'll be time to hear you. There'll be time to hear the board. We will definitely allot that time for you. But the purpose of tonight, once again, is to talk about where we are and where we're going as a district. After the REACH presentation, we have a presentation on dyslexia as well. We spoke about that in the spring and said that that was something we were going to present on. There's new legislation that came out years ago about mandating 2-hour dyslexia training every year, as well as making sure that we're servicing all our students to ensure that nobody slips through the cracks. So that's why it's not that we're looking to shorten the REACH program presentation or anything, but we have two presentations tonight. So we want to give each presentation the respectful time that they deserve. So we're thinking, a good 45 minutes or so, give or take, on REACH, and then a good 45 minutes or so, give or take, on dyslexia. And we all know, if you've been to any of our board meetings or committee meetings, that means it could be a little bit longer, it could be a little bit shorter. Usually it's a little bit longer. So we're going to give ourselves a little 45 minutes to an hour for each one.
I don't know if I could stand here without eating the gummy worm.
With that being said,
We're almost there.
Okay.
With that being said, I do want to say, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lacatina and Ms. Kelly D., principal from Lincrest School. Before I do that, I want to let you know, since our conversations, we've asked Ms. D. to really spearhead our REACH program. So that we have an administrator tied to it, somebody who could oversee it with Dr. Lacatina and work with our teachers district-wide. So we are hearing your concerns. We are making progress moving forward. You're going to see some of the things that we've been thinking about for the last month and kind of laying out moving forward. But with that being said, before I turn it over to them, Kelly has the PTO meeting in Lincrest, and she's here right now, and that starts at 7:30. She understandably is going to be a little bit late for it, but we are going to try to be a little conscious of her time, and she may have to step out around 7:45 so that she could go with her parents of her school. So I don't want you to think she's bailing out the back door. That would be me going out this door. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lacatina and Kelly.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, and good evening. I'm Natalie Lacatina. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Education here in Fair Lawn. Just to give you a little history, I've been here for about 16 years. I started as an elementary principal at Radford. I was there for 7 years. Then I was the middle school principal at Memorial for 2 years, and I've been in this role, I think this is my 6th year, perhaps 7th. I sort of lose track after a while. But just so you know my history, I was also a teacher of the handicapped when that was the certification that was given out. So I taught 3rd grade through 8th grade special education for 9 years prior to coming here. So tonight, as you have heard Mr. Rosenberg as well as Mr. Garcia tell you, we're going to be talking about our REACH program. We're going to walk you through what we do in grades K through 5, and then we're going to talk about some of our next steps. So again, I'd like to thank Mrs. Kelly D. for being here tonight to present. She has been working closely with me for the past couple of years. And she's going to be overseeing the REACH program for us. And I also want to welcome our REACH team who is here tonight. Jerry LaSala, who works in Milnes, Radburn, and Westmoreland. We have Nadia Yar, who works in Forest, Lincrest, and Warren Point. And Danielle Stewart, who is at Milnes. Great ladies. Danielle Stewart is new to our program this year. We welcome you. We're very excited to have you on board. But these ladies work very hard. They do fabulous things with our students, and I think you're going to see that tonight. So the first thing we thought we would do is open up our meeting with a little hands-on activity. So this is where the worm comes in, Mr. Rosenberg.
Yes.
So I'm going to invite the REACH team to come up, and how do you participate in a STEM activity? Because we focus on STEM in 3rd grade and 4th grade with our gifted students, and all of our students, in fact, we allow to participate in this. So we're going to involve you for a quick activity.
So this activity actually is used during our STEM day that we have in every elementary school for 4th graders. It generally takes place toward the end of the year, and it is a day where the children get to rotate between 4 or 5 different STEM activities for half a day, and experience them and process them with adults, and we get some volunteers that actually come in to help out. So this is the activity, and it's Save Fred. Fred is the worm, by the way. And this is the lead-in that the children see before they start. And as you can imagine, they get very excited when they see this. Every STEM day activity starts off with some video inspiration. This happens to be for Fred. So your job is to save Fred. Fred is on his capsized boat, which is the cup, and you need to get him through the life preserver, which is under the cup. And you can't touch the cup, the worm, or the water. Greg can't swim, you can only use the paper clips to get him through the life preserver. And that's what the children work on. I don't know, but you want to give it a try. You just want to eat the worm, I know. But the children love this activity. It requires them to solve problems. They have to work as a team. They have to communicate. And they also have to go through the problem-solving process that we really work with them in 3rd and 4th grade on, really focusing on the processing of solving a problem, trying something and not working, and then coming up with plan B. How are they going to change their approach? And then talking about what would they do differently the next time. Because that's a real push in STEM-related activities. What would you do differently the next time? How would you approach this problem differently and work as a team to solve it? That's where the real meat and potatoes of our STEM lessons come in, where the children have to really process their thinking of what they did.
Go ahead, give it a try.
Give it a try.
Mr.
So we
Garcia
can't
is being
touch-
brave.
You can't touch anything with your hands. You've already broken the rules. I saw your hands on the blue paper.
The superintendent's not like to lose. I am a sore loser. Putting it out there.
You can do anything you want to the paper clips, but you can, right,
Cindy, I'm coming over.
Can you
we have-
touch the paper clip?
you can touch the paper clips, yes, they're your tools.
You can't.
Only the paper clips.
You gotta be gentle with Fred too, so you can't stab him.
Yeah, don't.
I can pick him up,
Be nice
and
to
I have to
him.
get.
With the
You gotta be
paper
nice to him.
clips.
You
You have
gotta
to
be
move the cup.
I
Yes.
have to move the cup, but I can't move the cup.
I'm gonna tell you, a lot of the things we do in REACH.
Are you allowed to move the
STEM
cup with the paper
activities.
clip?
Yes.
But it has to be.
We can hold the bright preserver, right?
Yes, with the paper
Okay,
clips.
pick up, you can hold
That-
Oh, no, no, no,
with the paper, not with your
And
fingers.
we hold
Now it's
things
good.
that have them,
No, no,
we have
no,
the
it's
paper
good.
clips in our Fair Lawn program.
Clip within the
Yeah, but it's still too small. We need to
No, it's not.
expand it. Yeah, we do. We
You're
need
gonna
to
push it
expand
in.
it.
We'll expand it. But it doesn't go in this
Gotta
time.
Yeah.
Here, put it in.
They just have to come.
This is great teamwork
Yes.
How did you have 4 paper clips?
Don't worry about them.
Oh,
guys.
Just keep it open.
Okay.
Like there's one thing I want to do here is
Let me just do it this way. Can't see with your hands.
pull it. Go ahead.
Of course, the camera's on me. Wait a second.
Now lift that puppy up.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Lift it up on the whole thing. No, not yet.
got
Already read that.
All right, we'll give you a couple more minutes, and then we're going to move on with our presentation. Anybody save them yet? They got close, but Nick's stabbing him, so.
It's in.
You got
How
it.
far in? How far in?
That's why he's
Is he safe?
He's, you're pretty close. I would say that's that's a win. His head will be above water.
You're not allowed to.
It will be.
Yeah, so I think you're okay. We have a winner.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to tell you, in our STEM lessons, we don't declare a winner.
got to
No,
put
no,
it
no.
But
We got- we got-
you're adults.
Wait, listen, listen.
Good, I
Pull
feel
the-
bad.
Pull the life preserver. Pull the life.
There we go.
There you
Got
go.
it. Now you just got
Wonderful.
No.
Put it on top.
Yep, he can be, or back in the boat is okay.
In the boat.
Or he can even be in the boat.
it. All right,
Put it
good
back
job, guys.
Good job. Well done.
Okay, so that's just an example of one of the small activities that we have students participate in at STEM Day. Okay, so first we're going to talk about what the New Jersey Administrative Code says about gifted and talented education for grade K through grade 12. So basically, the state does not identify criteria for identifying gifted children. That is up to local school districts to make that decision. We are, however, supposed to use multiple measures to identify students, and we are supposed to compare students to their chronological peers. The other thing that Administrative Code does not dictate, it does not dictate what program or model we must use. It can be pull-out, it could be push-in, it could be differentiated instruction in the classroom, accelerated or acceleration, it could be individualized programs, advanced classes. There are a variety of ways that you can address the needs of gifted learners, but it is not specifically specified in Administrative Code. The code does, however, talk about the definition of giftedness. The federal government has a definition. Various organizations that advocate for gifted education have their definitions as well. This is very similar to what the federal government says, but in the state of New Jersey, they identify gifted and talented students as those students who possess or demonstrate high levels of ability in one or more content areas when compared to their chronological peers in the local school district, and who require modifications of their educational program if they are to achieve in accordance with their capabilities. That is right from the administrative code. So we know that, especially at the younger levels, it is really challenging to identify younger children as gifted. And in addition to things that would come to mind, like IQ testing and other standardized test scores, there are various behaviors that often indicate that a child could be gifted. So especially when students are 5 years old and 6 years old, our youngest children here in Fair Lawn, we really look to behaviors. What kind of behaviors is this child exhibiting? Is he curious? Is he a fast learner? Does he have wit and humor? Often, I don't know if any of the teachers here realize this or have had this experience, but I have a stupid sense of humor, and I would often say silly things in class. And it was very interesting how oftentimes it was only 1 or 2 students that would get sort of that abstract, like different kind of humor. And that's actually a characteristic often of gifted children. So you can see that there are many behaviors here that we look at and we consider when we are identifying gifted students. And again, especially at the younger ages when we often don't have that other information available. So what is the goal of our REACH program? So obviously we want to enrich the educational program of all children, while also meeting the needs of students exhibiting those gifted behaviors. So we focus on problem solving, critical thinking skills, and the critical thinking process. And we really want to see students gain independence in the learning process. And so we reach these goals in a variety of ways. So we're going to start to talk about what our program looks like from K to 5.
So I'm going to speak to you about the opportunities that we have in kindergarten, first and second grade for our students that are exhibiting some of the characteristics that Dr. Lakatina pointed out. I'm coming from a unique perspective on this because I was a first and second grade teacher right here in Fair Lawn prior to becoming the math coach who was in charge of the curriculum aspect and enriching the curriculum, to now overseeing the program as an administrator. So I feel like I kind of have different lenses on when I'm looking at this. So the first thing I want to talk about is the way that our teachers differentiate in the classroom. I feel that our teachers are experts in this area at meeting the needs of our students, and our curriculum really gives them so many options in terms of differentiation. So what I mean by that is that when a child is sitting in a reading class and they are reading far above grade level, they are reading texts on their own grade level. So right there we are differentiating for that child. They're going to come in contact with skills and strategies in those books that their peers are not going to encounter on the text that's at their level. And our teachers are doing individual reading conferences where they're setting goals with those students, goals that would not be set with a student that is on grade level in reading. And when you observe a teacher pulling a guided reading group or a strategy group with those readers, they're talking about things in first grade like characters, the way characters change over time in books, something that other peers might not be ready for. So it's beautiful to see that our curriculum in reading and writing really allows for that independent and individualized conferencing and the small group instruction taking place on a daily basis. In the math program, in the newest edition that we adopted, every single lesson comes with an enrichment option for the teachers. They actually come as a task card in K1 and 2, and so the teacher at her fingertips has this enrichment option to provide a student with. Many of them are self-guided. They step 1, step 2 with cute little characters on them to lead a student through some exploratory things in math that go beyond the grade level curriculum. It's not necessarily in math about moving more content down them, but more about digging deeper within the skills that are being introduced at that grade level. So in first grade, if they're learning ways to subtract or things like that, that child that's in need of enrichment that day would get a card that maybe has them exploring multiple ways of subtraction, or maybe coming up with their own algorithm for subtraction. So they're very unique cards that come with the program, in addition to things that teachers have developed on their own over time. We're also extremely thrilled about the extended learning module that we now have in every schedule K through 5. This 35-minute block of time enables the teacher to give each student what they need. And when we spoke to the teachers about that extended learning block, that's the only parameter we set, is give your students what they need during that 35-minute block. So if a child needs speech, OT, early intervention for reading, math remediation, those are the blocks of time that they are leaving the classroom to receive some of those services. And the teacher, instead of introducing something brand new, which will not be happening during that extended learning, she's able to really enrich the kids that are in front of her at that period. So just the other day, I can tell you in first grade, my largest class of 25, I walked in during the extended learning block and she only had 14 kids in front of her for that day. It's not going to happen every day, but that particular day she only had 14 in front of her because so many students were out doing other things. And she had the biggest smile on her face, and she said, this is wonderful, because now I can really work with these 14 that are in front of me and really individualize what I'm doing during this 35 minutes that I have every single day. So for a child that's in need of enrichment during that period, we envision some research projects going on in first grade. If a child has this really thirst for knowledge with nonfiction and wants to go off and study sharks, the teacher can set them up on a computer and say, this is the way we research sharks. Can you tell your classmates about it? And really individualize what those kids are doing during that extended learning block. And how does our REACH team meet the needs of K2 students? Well, first of all, our REACH teachers are a support for all of our staff. So when a teacher has a student that fits a lot of the criteria, they will contact the REACH teacher and say, I have this student, let's sit down and take a look. They will share all the information, all the assessments they have on that child, and together they will talk about what activities the REACH teacher may have at her fingertips to say, this is how you can support this child with more logic. I have this great work and analogies that I can give you to work, or this is some problem solving that I have. And so they work together to develop resources that the teacher can use in the classroom with those students. In addition, we do have the REACH teachers on occasion work individually with students on either a weekly or a bi-weekly basis when we've identified that that's what that child needs. Many times the REACH teacher will pull the child, work with them individually, teach them something or in a small group, and then send them back into their room with something to kind of work on until the next time they meet again. So also, on that, talking about the extended learning module that I was talking about in the last slide, the REACH teachers giving that support to the teachers will help them in that extended learning block to have the materials they need to be able to enrich all of the children in the room. So what programs does our REACH team offer? We offer whole group STEM-focused activities, which Natalie's going to talk about in a little bit. That's for our 3rd and 4th graders. We offer self-select independent study and word masters, and those are programs that the children who are highly motivated and high interest in that, they can self-select and join those programs by submitting a proposal to our REACH team. And we also have small group for identified students in literacy and math in grades 4 and 5. Much of our work that we do here in Fairlawn was inspired by Renzulli, who talks about a school-wide model for our schools. And so basically in that school-wide model, there's 3 types of ways to provide the enrichment school-wide. And so type 1 is really addressing all students in exploratory activities, like our STEM-focused activities. And he calls this the talent pool development, because the REACH teachers are working with the entire group of students, getting to know them, getting to know their behaviors, getting to know how they think. And that's type 1 according to Renzulli's school-wide model. Type 2 is where children have an opportunity to self-select what motivates them, and it's open for any child, and they can really pick topics that are of high interest to them, like our independent study that you'll see in a little bit. And type 3 is really for that small percentage of the population that is identified as gifted, to pull them out and in the content areas where they excel and offer them that small group instruction.
So as we've been talking about, we do have a focus on third grade, or on STEM in our third grade. This is STEM that is different from the STEM that we already do in the classroom. We do STEM activities with our students through math and through science. This, however, is not content-based. It's not following the curriculum, because with gifted education, we need to go beyond that. So what we do with these STEM activities, we focus on the engineering problem-solving process. We introduce students, what is an engineer? What does an engineer do? And how do you think if you're an engineer? What is that process? So we basically do a multitude of tasks for our students in the third grade. We do it all year long. Every child goes through 3 separate rotations throughout the school year and participate in a multitude of activities during that time. So the 5-step process is ask. Students are supposed to ask themselves, well, what's the problem? Is this problem worth exploring? Then they're asked to imagine, well, what would a solution to this problem be? Let's brainstorm this. And then they have to plan that solution to their problem. So maybe they're drawing a diagram where they are drawing something and planning out what they believe the solution to a problem would be. Then we ask them to create it. And so they work either individually or in teams to create. And then we ask them to think about it, and Jerry had mentioned this earlier, to think about it. How can we make this better if I thought about it and tried to redesign it again? We are constantly asking students to reflect on their thinking, reflect on what they're doing throughout this entire engineering problem-solving process. This is the focus of our third grade STEM program. And as Mrs. D was saying, we offer this to every single child because the research shows us that every student can benefit from these types of problem-solving and critical thinking activities. And that is, again, part of Renzulli's first little tier with trying to do things school-wide. So this is just a list of the third grade STEM activities. There are many of them throughout the year. They start with just thinking about how to repurpose an everyday object. What can you do with a crayon to help make it a better tool for us today than maybe when it was created? So they start small as they learn the steps in the process, and then they do things, lots of tower challenges. Build the tallest tower, build the strongest tower. There's a toy maker challenge, which the students really love. And we're starting a new one this year, which is the fairy tale parachute challenge. And I'm going to ask one of our REACH teachers to maybe explain a favorite activity in a little bit more depth, so people can understand that there's more to it than just building that tower.
Yes. So one of the things we do when we're introducing the last lesson of our third rotation is where they actually build just a tower that can withstand an earthquake, which is the shaking of the desk. Prior to that lesson, we do a little, we call it a building basics exploration with them, and we watch some videos about building and historically the pyramids, what makes the pyramids still standing versus, 3 blocks, one on top of the other. And then the children, we give them a bag of blocks in a group, thinking about what we've talked about, build the strongest tower you can, and then we test them. And they're very excited to see what structures were able to withstand the earthquake, or what parts of the structure were able to withstand the earthquake, and why. Why did this stand and this one didn't? What could they have done differently in their design to make it withstand the earthquake even more? The children are very excited about this. Not just the earthquake part, but they really do enjoy the building and having to overcome problems because our blocks are not all shaped like squares. We have some triangles. So they have to figure out if they can put 2 triangles together, they can kind of make a rectangle. It really requires a lot of communication and problem solving. And I often see them do trial and error. They'll try something, decide they don't like it, take part of it down, and redesign right in the first early steps of this process.
And those tower challenges always make me think of what we do in the high school with the Pasta Bridge. If any of you know the Pasta Bridge competition that has been happening in Fairlawn forever. So it's a little bit of a precursor, prepping them for later on to build that Pasta Bridge. So our 4th grade STEM activities continue into the first half of our 4th grade year. And there activities are basically based on a rainforest survival challenge. So all of the students in 4th grade go through 2 different rotations prior to somewhere in January. And so they are stranded in the Amazon, and they've got 2 challenges, and they have to work with teams to figure out, well, what kind of materials and supplies do we have here? How do we organize them? What do we think we can use them for to help us survive out here in the rainforest? And also a Give Me Shelter challenge. So again, similar steps, similar process that we go through in the 4th grade for the STEM activities. Also in 4th and 5th grade, we offer the literature and math seminars. These are those activities for identified students. And so these start during the second half of 4th grade, and they continue into the 5th grade year. And so students can participate in one or the other, or both, depending upon if they qualify for the program. So the big question is always, how are students identified? So as we said, we have to use multiple measures according to the state. They don't identify what those are, but there need to be multiple measures. So we use aptitude scores, student performance on standardized tests, classroom performance, and of course we always consider those behavioral traits that we discussed earlier. The beauty of having our REACH teachers work with every single student in 3rd grade and again in 4th grade, they get to know these children. They get to know them very well. They learn how they think. They watch them work, because we all know not every student is going to score at the highest level on standardized tests. We know that. But when our teachers have the opportunity to work with every student, they see something that maybe doesn't come across on that standardized test. So they are able to see some of these traits in our students, and that is a big consideration for us. So basically what happens is we take a variety of measures and we put them into a matrix, and there is a cutoff, and any student that makes that cutoff is in our literature and/or math seminars. We look at literature separate from math because, again, sometimes students really excel in one area and perhaps not the other. So we look at the COGAT screener. We are very excited about this. We are giving it for the first time this year. The COGAT is a very popular, probably the most widely used test to identify giftedness. And so we looked at a variety of assessments last year to determine what we thought would be most beneficial. And so we are actually giving that COGAT screener this week to students in grade 4. And so we're anxiously awaiting the results of that. We use CTP4, which is now CTP5. It's a revised test. We use scores from that. Students take that in grades 4 and 5. We now use PARCC scores. We used to use New Jersey Ask. And then when they went to PARCC, we didn't use that for several years for any kind of placement or consideration in district. And now, for the first time, we are using PARCC scores. Students take PARCC in literacy and math. And there was a new science test last year as well, although that was a field test, so we don't have scores for that. But our students take PARCC in grades 3 through 5. And then we also consider performance on classroom assessments. We are constantly assessing and monitoring our students' progress throughout the year. We have a variety of reading assessments where we're constantly assessing how our students are doing, how do we need to provide more support. And we also have a variety of assessments in math. So we look at mid-year and end-of-year math assessments to see how students are doing. The scores get put into a matrix, and then that is how we determine eligibility for REACH. And again, also the behavioral traits. We already told you that we have self-select programs. This is wonderful because, again, sometimes for those students that don't score the highest on some of our assessments, still are highly motivated. They really are curious about certain topics. They're passionate about certain topics. And we want to give them an opportunity to also do something outside of the curriculum. So we offer independent studies in 4th grade, the second half of the year, and in 5th grade at the beginning half of the year. And again, they fill out a proposal, They meet with the REACH teacher, and they get to work on a topic of interest to them. Because again, we all know that we need to capture students' interests sometimes to keep them motivated and moving forward in school. So this is a fabulous opportunity for all students in grades 4 and 5 to be able to self-select to be part of one of our gifted programs. In grade 5, we also have something called Word Masters. We have been participating in Word Masters for as long as I have been in this district. It is a national language arts and critical thinking competition where students learn high-level vocabulary and they use that vocabulary in analogies. So they're learning vocabulary, they're learning the thinking skills required to do analogies, and they compete several times a year in a national competition. And our students traditionally do pretty well, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So this chart shows you the numbers of students, as well as the percentage of students that participate in our various programs. We are still working on the independent study in Word Masters. We're gathering that data as we speak. These programs, as we already explained, in grade 4 will start in January. But if you look at the data from the past 2 years, you can see that typically there's at least 10% of our students that are engaged in this, any aspect of our REACH program. You will see that in some areas, in some years, it's much higher than that. So we have 14% of our students in grade 4 math. We had 18% of our students one year in grade 5 math. But look at the self-select programs. I mean, we're in the 20s in many places on the percentages of students that choose to participate in our programs. So, we are really pleased with the number of students that we are able to have participate in our programs in, this is the 4th and 5th grade, and as you know, 3rd grade, everybody participates. And also the beginning of 4th grade, everybody participates. And again, those asterisks just indicates that the independent study and the Word Masters are indeed self-select programs.
So, what's next? First of all, we plan to visit other districts and hear about their programs. We are going to continue our membership with the Bergen County Gifted Consortium, and one of the benefits of that Bergen County network is that they keep this file of everybody's programs. It's in a Google document, so if people leave their districts, you still have a contact for that district, and so our REACH team, Natalie and I, we have access to knowing what everybody else is doing in Bergen County, so that we can tap into some of that. One of the biggest takeaway, I think, from one of our first meetings there was not one district in Bergen County is doing the same thing. Everyone is doing something different. So it's interesting to see what other districts are doing, and we're going to tap into that with some visits and continuing our membership with Bergen County Gifted Consortium. Our REACH teachers attend the Rutgers Gifted Education Conference every year. They are going again this year in November, right?
I think so.
We plan to have our REACH team present at each school's PTO and PTA meetings so that all of our parents are aware of our REACH program. We had one 2 years ago at Lindcrest when Sophia Bufis was there, so it'll be good timing to introduce Ms. Yar at one of those meetings. We are going to be attending iSTEAM, the TMI series of workshops. We belong to TMI, so we're going to take advantage of that and attend those workshops. Many of our teachers in district are, not just limited to our REACH team. And we are attending the National Association for Gifted Children Convention, which is awesome. Really looking forward to that and bringing back a lot of information from that as well.
I think I'm just going to piggyback because I think, what people don't normally see is how much thought goes into this REACH program year after year. And it hasn't stayed the same for the past 20 years. It has changed depending upon needs. And so we try to keep it current and we try to keep it interesting for students, keeping in mind, again, that we want to offer the programs to a variety of students in a variety of different ways. And so a lot of this has been happening, again, over the years with the Rutgers Gifted Conference and the Bergen County Gifted Consortium. It was my first time going to one of those consortiums, and as Mrs. D said, truly fascinating to realize that there are so many different models and so many different ways to reach our gifted students. So it was really beneficial for me to hear other districts speak and hear what they had to say. and gave us some interesting ideas moving forward.
So when I surveyed other superintendents, I asked them what they do after our August meeting, and some of the results that came in, as Kelly said, it was so staggering to see how different everyone was. And, you know, one stuck out to me, a very, very high-performing Bergen County district, who said we don't do anything. All we do is differentiate in the classroom and offer AP and honors courses at high school. Then there's other districts who said we just revamped our whole program, please come and see it. So we have that yin and yang when we look at other districts as well. So we do plan on going and seeing other districts, as you can see up there, but it was staggering to me to see the results and it be, you know, what Kelly just said as well. That's what they're hearing as well.
So we want to just end our presentation with some of the highlights for our REACH program. And again, I'm just going to quickly say, we're really proud that we sort of piggybacked on this Renzulli model, where those are the 3 different ways to address students that are gifted with general exploratory activities, our whole class, grade 3 and grade 4, our group training activities, which are our self-select programs, and our individual and small group investigation, which is the literature and math seminars.
We're really pleased to say that we were able to implement a STEM day in all 6 elementary schools. That was something new brought up by the team that they really wanted to do as sort of a celebration at the end of the 4th grade after they had this journey with STEM. It was really exciting to see that go off in all 6 elementary schools. When you walk in that gym on STEM day, the engagement is at an all-time high. It's unbelievable. Every student is engaged, hands-on, so I'm really proud of that. And our 2017-18 5th grade Word Masters team placed in the top 10 in the nation for overall performance. Unbelievable. Keep in mind that our Word Masters program is self-select, so we are not taking who we want. We are allowing the students to self-select and taking anybody that wants to come with us. So that was amazing. And we have 2 students that were recognized for achieving a perfect score. Unbelievable. And you saw back when Natalie showed the numbers, we have a high amount of students that do take on that Word Masters challenge. So awesome job.
Before we get to that last slide, I realized I wanted to see if Mrs. LaSala would describe quickly what a seminar looks like, because I don't think the way that we describe it really gives it merit. I happen to love that owl pellet one, but
Yeah,
you can
that's
talk
the-
about whichever one you
I'll
want.
talk about the owl.
Thank
Okay,
you. So maybe
So-
give people an example of what those are like.
Okay, so,
Could you stand up?
sure, sure. So in 4th grade, we have, in our literature seminar, we read a book that is kind of centered around one of the main, I'm going to say characters, are these owls. And so as an extension to the book, we go through the typical, we read the book, we discuss the book at a much deeper level than what really is probably going on in the regular classroom. The children are really capable. First of all, the book is above a typical 4th grade level. And we talk about themes that are deeper. Really, we dig deeper into the themes, into characters. The children really take on leadership roles within our group. I often have the children, as they're reading, something they do in their regular classroom is post-it note their thinking as they're reading. I ask them to do the same thing, but to highlight a quote that made them respond in that way, and then they share and discuss it. That allows them to take on some leadership role in our meeting. But then we take it a step further, and the children typically become very interested in these owls. So we find out about this type of owl, and we do some nonfiction reading relating to this. And one of the big highlight excitement activities is the dissection of an owl pellet. That kind of goes along with the book in a way. They're very excited to do that. It's exciting for them to pull apart. First of all, they don't really know what an owl pellet is. They think that it's going to be something, unsavory, but really it is kind of, but let's face it, are sanitized. When we buy them from the scientific company, they sanitize them. But, they wear gloves, they have tools, they're gently pulling them apart, identifying the animals that these owls have eaten from their skeletons that are remained, left behind. So it's very exciting for them, and they really look forward to that. So it's taking the literature and incorporating some of the science and nonfiction, and the children write responses. We really try to take it to the next level and have them really do that digging deeper.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Question of clarification. Are the seminars for the second half of fourth and into fifth now happening during the extended learning module, or are they being pulled out at a different time?
They could be coming out during the extended learning module, but
During their
it-
literacy or their math, because they've been identified as excelling in that area. So what we do is we take them from part of that period because we know they're already meeting the curriculum in that. Yeah, so it's during the math and
Jeff?
Yeah. I have a few questions. They're not that long. First, thank you for your presentation and the time that you've taken to put together. And
Sure.
thank you to Mr. Rosenberg and to the superintendent for responding to the public and getting them this information. I'm curious about something about the selection, to start with the selection process. You mentioned that most of what you're using, I think, 4 of the 5 or 3 of the 4 criteria are standardized tests, CTP4, CTP5, PARCC, what have you. But I'm curious that, I've got to check my math, 83% of the behaviors of a gifted child are not part of those standardized tests. So we have, you listed 18 pieces, 18 characteristics of the gifted child. 15 of the 18 are not on standardized tests. For example, curiosity, thoughtful questions, original imaginations, talent in art, music, things like that. So is there anything in the works to maybe recompose the selection process, being that the characteristics of a gifted child is incongruent with the criteria to become a quote gifted child? So
Yeah.
I'm curious about that.
So those, again, so behavior characteristics are a piece. So obviously, aptitude and achievement are very much a part of being gifted. I think that's the part that we're more familiar with. This is stuff that maybe we don't think about as often. This year, we have a behavioral checklist that we've been working on from last year and maybe even prior to that, where we have a behavioral checklist we're going to be giving our 4th grade teachers to complete,
Thank you.
which will become a component of it, but good
Yeah.
question.
It's something
Yeah.
we were always looking to incorporate, and the ladies came across something last year at one of the conferences and came back like, this
Very
is the
excited.
piece. This is what we're
Right.
missing, right? So we've been kind of looking at it. How can we make it more for Farallon, and what pieces of it do we really need? And so,
That piece, and also sort of like the COGAT piece, is not a traditional achievement test, standardized test like a PARCC, right? So again, sort of missing that piece that shows us the way kids think, which isn't necessarily showing what they can memorize and then be able
Well,
to
we know
do.
that PARCC is the
Right.
opposite of creativity and
So, well, and that's
spitting
what
stuff
we
back.
like about this COGAT screener, and we're really excited about this behavioral checklist.
I appreciate your
Yeah,
answer.
so it's not on there because it hasn't been incorporated in the past.
Okay.
So, but it's certainly something we are
Right,
incorporating
because
this
as we
year.
know, and we're having the dyslexia conversation later, and
Yes.
a lot of those students might be gifted, but they may not be able to have, they don't have certain abilities that other students may have. So thank you for that. I just have one other.
You're wel- Can I add on to that for
Yeah.
1 second? The other piece too, though, is that while we have criteria, there are always kids that are on the cusp. There are always kids that are close. And so we look at those students. It's not that all or nothing. Again, a teacher sometimes is surprised that a child's scores aren't higher based on what they see in the classroom. And so that oftentimes comes into play, even without that formal behavioral checklist. But I just wanted to mention that as well.
And so I'll skip the other ones. Is there in the district some type of evaluatory process that is ensuring that the gifted students are in fact getting the things they need in the classroom outside of what's going on here? For example, you're saying that there have conferences, there's the reading levels, there's the 35 minutes that they're getting, the things of that likeness. So what's happening with the district to assure that students are getting those things, or is it in lesson plans? Is it being evaluated? How do we know that they're getting what they need?
Yeah, it's exactly what you said. I mean, it's our curriculum writing, it's observations. We use multiple observers for every single person in this district. We think that it's important that multiple sets of eyes are always looking at our teachers, observe our educational specialists. So we have supervisors, varieties of supervisors, principals, observing teachers. We collect lesson plans on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. We look at those, and there's so much informal observation that goes on with walkthroughs. And we also have students taking various assessments that obviously we would be alerted if a child or groups of children were not doing as well as we would anticipate them doing, that we have to stop and take a look and say, well, why is that happening?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to ask you, Mark, to hold off. I want to get some questions from the public while Mrs. D is still here, and then we'll go back to board comments. Okay. If you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, if you'd raise your hand, and if you'd just give me your name, so that I have it right. You got it? Go ahead.
You paid that all right. Okay. Nick Ruffalo. I went through the REACH program at Forest School, and actually, when I think back, most of my memories are in that REACH room. We dissected a worm. We did the big dig. I don't know if you guys do that anymore. That was amazing. You had to come up with your own society and dig it for the other schools to pull it up. Wonderful program, and we do a wonderful, amazing job addressing students with special needs. And when we think of that, we think of people with learning, people who need to be brought up. And I think there's special needs that go the other way. You have kids who are just gifted and struggle in class because of grades and whatnot, because they either get bored, they're not challenged, or they just have a different learning need that is not dyslexia, that is not an emotional disorder or something else. And we do such an amazing job with what we call special needs, or I'm not sure exactly what the term is. That, I mean, everyone talks about how Fair Lawn's amazing. They move to this district, they send their kids from other towns, and I think we do a wonderful job at that. And I think it'd be really great to also make sure and think about, when we think about special needs, as kids who have other aptitudes that we could be really meeting. And I think the REACH program does a great job and could go a lot further. That said, I don't know if it would be the board or if it would be the REACH teachers. I love the maker movement, and I'm kind of, I don't want to say involved in it, but I know a lot. There are a lot of companies that are emerging that are probably looking for partnerships and willing to do discounts on things and trial programs. If you would like to talk about that, I am completely open. I will try and reach out and make whatever contacts I can. Again, not sure if that's for you guys. So there's not really a question here. I just want to say the REACH program for me at the time, 30 years ago, worked wonderful. And I think it's really hard to make that distinction. I get it. It really is. And there's a lot of kids on that cusp, and it's really tough. But if we think about it the same way and the other way, there's kids on that other cusp, and it's really hard. Who do we give extra and who do we don't? I think we really need to look at it both ways, because the kids on that top, if you do not give them what they need, the school system really could fail them as well, because they get bored and it's tough. So that's what I want to say.
I appreciate your comment, and we love the idea of maker spaces, and have thrown around conversations for a while. And again, going back to that extended learning time, to have that kind of material available to students, so that if they're not getting pulled out for something, you don't need to be identified. You could be, again, that child that just wants to go back and build something and design something. So we love that idea of maker spaces, and we might pick your brain about some companies. So.
Please do.
Absolutely.
Go.
Dale Cullen.
Hey, no, Dale.
A little familiar with the program. I just want to say that those lists, those behavioral lists, have been used for years and years, and have been used in our program for years and years, and maybe not necessarily in a very formal way, but always at least in an informal way. So it's not new, it's been used, it goes back 40 years, maybe more. So we have used them, and they are very helpful.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. This will be our more formal year of using them, but you're absolutely right. We have always considered that stuff.
So the brain of the
Can
gifted,
you just give?
Alba Morales,
Thank
Global Doctors. The brain of the gifted child works very different than the brain of other children. And they have behavioral issues like overexcitabilities, intensities. Some of them need to have something perfectly done or it's not adequate enough. And do you, as a team, go to the classrooms or talk to the teachers in these classrooms? Do they get any training on how to deal with these behavioral issues? Because they might seem that they're being disturbed in the classroom, or they might not be doing it right, or they might, but it's that. Like, I know my child, for example, she doesn't want to write because the letters are not perfect. And it's not because she's not capable of doing it, but it's just because the letter is not as perfect as the book is showing it. So for somebody, you should look at her writing and you might be like, oh, that is very poorly written. And yes, it is. But at the same time, they have this asynchronous development. So I don't know how the teachers in the classroom, you guys are spread so thin. Are they getting any training on all these characteristics of the children that they can help them in the classroom while they're there?
Thank you, Alba.
Go ahead. I was going to talk a little bit. So we have dedicated time to our faculty where we hear presentations from within our experts, if you will, on various topics. So it wouldn't be uncommon for a REACH teacher to give a presentation to staff saying, these are the characteristics. This is the way I can support you in your classroom if you have students that you need some ideas for. So having that faculty meeting time where the REACH teachers can devote half an hour to an hour to say to our staff, this is how I'm here to support you. This is the way that you can look at your students and identify some that might need a little additional support. Maybe typing her responses would help her because the letters are perfect on a computer screen, or give her another choice and offer those support strategies. So our teachers are trained through our REACH team.
And I also wanted to say that what you bring up, not every gifted child looks the same. So while we looked at that behavioral checklist, your child really might not hit every one of those boxes, or maybe not even half of them. So there is a wide range of what giftedness looks like in a classroom. And so we talk about differentiation all the time and different students' needs. But you're right, that's a good point for us to keep reinforcing, that it might not look the same everywhere, and not to mistake a behavior for something else that it might not be. And I think we do a really good job of constantly doing that. In fact, next week, 2 weeks from now, we have a new Educator Academy where we bring our new teachers in and we do things about differentiation and about how to address diverse learners in the classroom. Students that have disabilities, 504s, gifted, ELLs, and so it is something that we are aware of. And our teachers constantly talk to the classroom teachers. I'm sure not as often as they'd like, but there are frequent times where they meet and say, like, let's talk about, any of your students that may need some extra help to enrich them. But we certainly can continue to provide more and more of that.
And I want to say one more thing on that note. The teachers do a great job of articulating from grade level to grade level too. So when the teacher learns your daughter this year, she's going to communicate with the next year's teacher, hey, these are some things that I found that worked for her. So I think our teachers do a really good job of talking from one teacher to the next to say, this one you're going to have to start right away with some more challenging things to keep them focused and keep them on task. So those conversations are happening in all of our buildings.
Jeff Owens. Our son is in the 3rd grade. We've been trying since he was in 1st grade to get REACH services for him. Seeing what you've explained for 4th and 5th grade, it looked very extensive and well thought out. The identification that you spoke about is not happening, or it has not been happening in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grades.
In your experience?
In my experience, in any of the parents that we've spoken to in these grades, we fought for months to get him evaluated by somebody from REACH. when they finally agreed to give him some work to keep him from climbing the walls because he was bored with the classwork, he was given puzzles and coloring pages. Sometimes the same coloring pages 3 times in a row. And that was it. There was no, differentiation. There was no relation to the curriculum that he was being taught. The following year, he got nothing because the teacher told him, "There's no time. We don't have time for this in our classroom. We're too busy." Some of the teachers that we spoke to in those previous 2 years didn't even know the program was available to them. All we kept hearing was, it starts in 4th grade, it starts in 5th grade.
Well, I'm sorry that you got the wrong information because it's really the wrong information. This is the brochure that we pass out. The information from here is on the brochure that we pass out to our families every year. So I'm sorry that you didn't reach out to me.
We did.
You reached out to me when?
you and Mr. Sala.
Okay, I mean, we can talk later. Again, we can speak of instances in all of our schools where we have done work with K1 and 2 students, absolutely. When I was a principal, I could tell you about the student that Mrs. Cohen used to work with. I mean, this is what is supposed to be happening, and I'm sorry that your experience was different.
I'd like you to explain how the differentiation happens in K through 3, because you didn't explain that in your presentation.
I think that Mrs. D explained that very thoroughly when we were talking about how we address K to 2. She talked about what goes on in the reading classes, and she talked about what goes on in the math classes and how we differentiate that instruction. We talked about providing resources to the classroom teachers, and I think that Mrs. LaSalle even brought some of that up. And so we don't evaluate students per se. Like, we would not give an IQ test to a student. So I'm not certain what you're looking for as far as the evaluation process.
I'm looking for something a little more than coloring pages.
No, well, and I wouldn't, and that's agreed. But I'm not sure that's the evaluation process. But again, feel free to give me a call, and we can certainly meet with your child's teacher and principal and the REACH teacher. But I'm sorry that that was your experience, because this is what is supposed to be happening in district all over.
Right, thank you.
Good evening. Wilkin Santana, 30 Low Avenue. I'm here I'm a parent, and I'm here to support the REACH program. I believe it's not only the law, but it's the moral and right thing to do to educate all of our children. Because when we educate all of our children, we're meeting the needs of all the children. I have a few questions. I would like to know if it's possible that we can do a survey about what the parents of those children that are currently classified as gifted and talented think of the program. They're the customers. I would like to make that a suggestion, to see what the parents of the current gifted and talented students think of the program, and if they have any suggestions, feedback, questions, or concerns. Also, I would like to know when will the visit to the other districts take place, and if you will consider any of our neighbors to visit, like Paramus, Glenrock, I would like to know also if in the record of a student, it will appear that a child, once a child is classified as a gifted and talented, if that goes onto the permanent record of the student, right? And in regards to one of the board members stated, like the programs that the child is entitled to, will that be on the books? Like, will that be on the record, so the parent, just as a special needs student has an IEP with the listed services, will that gifted and talented parent get something in writing, so they're better able to work with the school and collaborate to make sure their child is receiving the proper education to meet the needs of that child?
Welcome. If you want an answer, let them answer, because you're asking them too many questions at
That's
once.
fine.
I think I have them.
They very talented, so they can handle it.
I think I have them. So we'll consider a survey. I'm not going to answer yes or no at this point in time, but it has already been brought up and it's already been a discussion. So it's certainly something that we're considering. We'll be visiting districts this year. Absolutely, we'll be visiting neighbors. In fact, we'll probably be visiting primarily Bergen County districts, especially those that are similar to us and those that are in our consortium. We've already made, again, some contacts at the meeting, as well as the contacts that Mr. Norcia has made. And as far as it being in their file, there's not a designation on a report card or anything that talks about being gifted. The same way there's really not anything on a report card indicating that a student is special needs as far as special education.
No, I meant like on the student record, so when the student moved from grade to grade, you know.
So I'm not sure if we put that letter in there. It's in Genesis, but does that then go forward? Like, how is that transferred over to another district? It is indicated in our student database. I'm not sure what that looks like when it goes to another district. I'm not sure of that answer, but I could find out. I'm not sure what it looks like.
And one last thing, if I may, Mr. Rosenberg. I think this is a program that a lot of us, parents and residents, we want to make sure that we have the best program available for our children.
Absolutely.
And we have to, you know, like a family, we have to put the money aside to make sure that this program is top-notch and plan ahead and work together and put our heads and minds together so in the future, the funds are there to meet the needs of the kids. You know.
So,
I'm not saying that's not happening,
no,
but
that's fine. These are all good questions. That's why we're meeting now. I mean, we heard your concerns in August. We heard the questions come up. We were asked to have this meeting. We had said that we would have this meeting in the fall. We are looking into the REACH program.